It was supposed to be my moment, my chance to finally prove myself. But when I needed family the most, my own stepbrother decided to betray me, taking the money I worked so hard to build. Little did he know that betrayal would ignite a fire I could never put out. I had always been the responsible one. I did everything right, studied, worked hard, followed the rules. My stepbrother, on the other hand, was the wild card. Charming, reckless, and always looking for the shortcut. When our family's business was about to be sold, both of us had an equal say. But when the deal went down, Jake pulled a fast one. Without my knowledge, without even consulting me, he took the deal and pocketed the profit. I was blindsided. The money, the power, the future, gone in a heartbeat. Jake thought it was a smart move. He thought he had secured his future. But I knew better. He had sacrificed the long term for a quick win, and I wasn't about to let that slide. I wasn't going to fight for the money, no, I was going to fight for something bigger, control. I wasn't going to let this betrayal define me. I was going to take everything back. The day I found out was the day I knew I had to act. I could have easily walked away, let it go, but that wasn't who I was. I was better than that. Jake had taken the money, and with it, he thought he had power. But he didn't have the right connections, the vision, or the leadership to truly lead the business. What he didn't understand was that power wasn't about money, it was about influence, about control. And that was something I had, something he could never take. I began to lay my plans. I started working the angles he missed. I reached out to the people he had alienated, the ones who could help me take control. It wasn't about revenge, it was about winning back what was mine. I knew I needed to play the long game. Jake was acting impulsively, thinking he had already won. He was focused on the money, while I was focused on the future. But there was one thing I had to do before I could make my move. I needed to expose Jake's mistake, the cracks in the deal he had made. I started investigating every aspect of the business he thought he had secured. It didn't take long before I found the fatal flaws in his plan. He had signed contracts without fully understanding the implications, made promises to investors that he couldn't keep. The more I uncovered, the more I realized I could use this to take him down. He thought the money was enough. He thought that was all he needed to win. But I knew better. What I had was the future, and soon, Jake would see how wrong he was. With my research complete, I set my plan into motion. The board, the investors, everyone had doubts about Jake's ability to lead. I knew how to play on that. It wasn't enough to expose his mistakes. I had to make them see that I was the one who could bring real change. I worked in silence, talking to the right people, showing them the gaps in Jake's leadership, his lack of foresight. I didn't need to rush it, I needed them to see for themselves that I was the one who could rebuild. And once they saw that, I would be in control. The moment came. I presented my plan to the board, clear, concise, and full of promise. Jake wasn't even in the room. He had underestimated me, and now he would have to watch as everything he thought he owned was slipping through his fingers. The final confrontation came unexpectedly. Jake tried to save face by pushing through a deal that he thought would fix everything. But it was too late. I had already taken control, and the board knew it. The votes were in, and I had the majority. The business was mine. Jake stood there, stunned, as he realized what had just happened. The look on his face said it all. The power he thought he had was gone, taken from him by someone he once called family. I didn't need to say anything. My actions spoke louder than words ever could. In the quiet after the storm, I took a moment to reflect. Jake had been my stepbrother, my family. And yet, he betrayed me for the promise of short-term gain. It hurt more than I cared to admit, but it also taught me something valuable. The truth was, I had underestimated how far he was willing to go for money and power. I had always seen us as equals, but he had seen it differently. To him, winning meant taking it all, even if it meant betraying the ones closest to him. But in the end, it wasn't the money or the power that mattered, it was the long-term vision. I had secured the future, not for myself, but for the company, for the people who believed in me. That was the true victory. Looking back, I realized how important patience had been in this journey. I didn't rush to seek revenge. I didn't act out of anger. I waited for the right moment, played the long game, and when the time came, I took control. Sometimes, the best way to get back at someone isn't by rushing into action. It's about taking your time, building your strategy, and letting your opponent make the mistakes that will ultimately lead to their downfall. With control firmly in my hands, I set to work rebuilding the company. It wasn't just about taking the money back. It was about creating a legacy, one that I could be proud of. Jake still lingered in the background, trying to find ways to undermine me. But I had the power now, and every move he made only showed how much he had lost. He tried to use our shared past against me, but I was past that. I had a future to build. And as I put my plan into action, I realized that the company was stronger than ever. It wasn't just mine, it was ours, and I had secured it for everyone who believed in me. Jake would never understand that. There would be no more room for Jake's interference. It was time to end this once and for all. Jake tried to rally a few investors, trying to claw back what he thought was his. But the more he tried, the more people saw him for what he was, someone who couldn't see beyond his own greed. I walked into that final meeting, and when it was over, Jake knew. He was out. And I was in. There would be no more power struggles. The company was mine, and I would lead it into the future. It wasn't just about winning back the company. It was about something deeper. It was about proving to myself that I could rise above betrayal, above everything Jake had thrown at me. As I sat in the office, looking out at the empire I had rebuilt, I realized that the true victory was in the peace I felt. The battle was over, and I had won, not just for the business, but for myself. I had control now, and that control was something no one could take from me. Revenge isn't about anger. It's about patience, about playing the long game, and about ensuring that when the dust settles, you're the one standing tall. If you want to win, make sure it's not just for today, but for the future. The true power lies in control, not in quick wins.